Hey, what's up, everyone? Animal Based Dad here. Another beautiful early morning in rural Hampshire, UK. Up at 4 a.m. again. Been working on the book. Taking a bit of time now to come sit outside with a coffee. Get some of the early morning sunlight in my eyes. And something I've been thinking about recently has been the biohacking space. Um, so things like Wim Hof breathing techniques, hot and cold exposure, stuff like that. Stuff that's not not necessarily the chemical biohacking like that. That's a whole entirely different things. Um, things like resveratrol and like the different chemical compounds that can be used to produce hormetic effects for longevity. Um, but I'm just thinking, like, when I first started down this whole health journey, um, I viewed all of this as biohacking. To be fair, like I viewed everything that was different to modern day, normal, everyday routine in life to be a biohack because there were certain things that were demonstrably powerful improving my metabolic health and my physical and mental health in turn. And what I've come to understand over the years, and something that I'll attempt to unpack in a little bit better detail, is that metabolic health has five fundamental pillars. So there's five things so far as everyday routine and habits are concerned that are biologically and intrinsically linked to each other and fundamental to proper metabolic health and function. And those five things are your nutrition, your sleep, your movement, so exercise, your light exposure, and your grounding, so being electrically connected to the earth. Um, so these five things are ancestrally appropriate. Human beings have been doing those things for as long as we've been around, and as a result, they have added via evolutionary pressures to the way that our biology is informed, the way that our biology works, the way our physiology works. Um, and what that means is that these are essentially mandatory. Like for proper metabolic health and function in a human being today, you have to be paying attention to your nutrition, your sleep, your movement, your light exposure, and your grounding, your electrical connecting to the earth. And all of these play a major role, an intrinsically linked role. They work on and off of each other to underpin and hold up your metabolic health. And if you're letting one or any number of these five pillars be neglected in your lifestyle, your metabolic health suffers as a consequence. Now, these are not biohacks. I've come to understand them as being the fundamental basics, the pillars that hold metabolic health up. And they're different to biohacks in that they're mandatory and non-negotiable. So you take things like meditation, breathing techniques, hot and cold exposure. Those are biohacks, right? And what I mean by that is that they are augmentations. They're things that you can add over the top of getting the basics right to augment and improve outcomes. So they definitely work. I'm not suggesting for a second that they don't work and give positive benefit, but they're not the mandatory minimum, and they should be added over and above on top of the mandatory minimum. In other words, they shouldn't replace any of those five fundamental pillars of metabolic health. So meditation doesn't replace any of the five that I've listed. Breathing techniques doesn't replace any of the five that I've listed. And hot and cold exposure definitely doesn't replace any of the five that I've listed. you don't need to meditate. It can be beneficial to do so, definitely, but you don't have to do it. You're not going to suffer if you don't. You don't need to have breathing techniques. Definitely beneficial if you do it. If you know how, it can absolutely help. Very, very, very effective tool. But you don't suffer if you don't do it. It doesn't cause, or it doesn't lead to suffering through not doing it in the way that those 5 foundational pillars do. And the same with hot and cold exposure. Definitely advantageous if you do it, but it doesn't lead to suffering in its absence. So it's not biologically mandatory to do the biohacks, but it is biologically mandatory to do the foundational stuff. And I think that's quite important for people to grasp. It's made a big difference in my own health. It's made a big difference in how I structure my daily routine. So I am very, very passionate about metabolic health and very, very passionate about being as healthy as I possibly can for as long as I possibly can across my lifespan. I want my quality of life to be as high as possible across my lifespan. And so I have come to the place where I structure my daily routine around my nutrition, my sleep, my movement, my light exposure, and grounding. And grounding sounds like a funny one, and I get that. I thought it was hoodoo, voodoo, flippin' nonsense when I first came across it. I really did. I thought, like, what the hell? Like, in fact, the first time I came across grounding, it was some stupid reality TV show that Zac Efron was doing. I forget the name of it now, but he was with this vegan hoodoo flippin' weirdo, this long-haired dude who just, they got somewhere and this dude had to get out of the car and go stand barefoot in the grass, and he was carrying on about how fantastic this was. And now my prejudice came into play, and I'll be open and upfront about that. The dude's a vegan, so I'm immediately like, there's nothing this guy's going to say that I'm going to agree with or listen to. And that's my prejudice. So hands up, I'll own that. And yeah, he stood on the grass barefoot and carried on about how good it was for him and blah blah blah. And I thought, what a bunch of crystal bloody giggle twig smoking nonsense this is. And then a while later, Professor Barkay was talking about it. Now, Professor Barkay is someone I have immense amounts of respect for, because he is a out and out hardcore scientist, and he had been through a similar sort of position to what I was, where he thought this was hoodoo, voodoo, flippin' nonsense, but he had taken the step to go, oh, well, maybe let's just look into it a bit. And he had looked into it quite thoroughly, and much to his surprise, it actually is it has fairly robust science around it, and it makes a lot of sense. And so he started talking about it, and I sat back, I started paying attention, because okay, this wasn't someone where my prejudice was leading me to say, nah, this is rubbish, I can't listen to this person. This was someone whose opinion I respect. And then as a consequence, I started looking into it, and it actually makes a massive difference. Like, to be electrically connected to the earth, just standing barefoot in the grass for periods of the day, as and where you can, the changes, the electrical changes that it does within you, the thinning of the blood that it does, is actually astounding. I would encourage everyone to look into it where you get a chance to. It really is an important part of your metabolic health. Like, you do require it, and there's good evidence to show that where people, especially in modern life, people completely isolate themselves from touching the earth. Like, you constantly have shoes on, you're constantly dressed in clothes, you're never actually connected with the earth. You've always got this insulating layer around you, and that's not how our biology was informed. That's not how we came to be what we are today. It's only very recent in our history that we've been doing that, and it's actually quite bad for us to be completely insulated from the earth all the time. It's not a good thing. So yeah, look into grounding. I know it sounds like absolute nonsense, and I thought so too, but it really is solid. Like it's got robust science behind it. It makes a lot of sense, and it makes a difference when you do it too. Like I try. I, I'm not someone who's going to go and spend money on the latest gizmos and gadgets. I keep my mobile phones for as long as I can. So I keep my mobile phones for like 4, 5, 6 years, basically until they stop being supported by like the Android Auto in my car. And I only replace phones when an incompatibility is introduced that makes them inconvenient to have. So I run them for as long as possible. I'm not someone who has to have the latest gadget. So I'm not going to be buying these grounding pads and grounding sheets and stuff like that that are available and online. I don't see that as a necessary expense where I can just get outside barefoot on the grass for a while each day. But you do have these products. So if you don't have a grassy area available to you, you can purchase these products that plug into your electrical sockets in the wall, into the earthing part of those sockets, because they all have an earth attached to them. And you can ground yourself through that way. So Bart K has got a strap. Sorry, Professor K. I'll show that you respect. Professor K has got a strap that you wear that then runs along a lead and plugs into the wall. And he wears that while working at his desk. So he's earthed during that time. And that's easily hours a day where you are then electrically earthed without having to really break out of your normal cycle pattern. So they can be incredibly convenient. So I'd encourage you to consider that if getting outside on the grass is not something that you can reliably do on a daily basis. I am very, very fortunate. I live in rural Hampshire. I get home from work. I'm outside with the kids, especially over the summer months. So I can very, very easily be barefoot in the grass. And that works for me, and that's what I do. So I get a period of time at the end of the day, each day, barefoot outside on the grass, and that's how I take care of my grounding. So that was a little segue into grounding, just because I'm mindful of what my prejudice was, and I'm mindful that when I mention grounding, there's most likely some of you out there who are a little bit like, oh, it's a bit airy fairy nonsense that. But I would encourage you look into it. It really does have some good robust science behind it. Really, really does make a difference. So then, excuse me, coming back to my points then. So I structure my daily routine such that I know that I can prioritize and put investment into my nutrition, my sleep, my movement, my light exposure, and my grounding. And because I've built those things into my daily routine, I can feel that I am better for it. Like it really does make a difference. And it's not necessarily a over the night or overnight, like instant difference. There's no instant gratification. This is a series of incremental changes over time that add up to be big changes overall. So the key to success is consistency, and that consistency takes time. So it has to be part of your routine. You have to do it regularly. It doesn't have to be perfect. So the key to consistency, the key to success is consistency, not perfection. And I really love that little saying because it's so true. You don't have to be perfect all the time. And the reason that makes such a difference is life is messy, life happens. And like when I started down this path, it was very, very easy. I started in the nutrition space. That was the first big thing that made a change for me. And I would have days where, oh, that temptation to have that bit of chocolate or that biscuit or the ice cream or something was just too much to handle, and I'd cave and I'd eat something bad. And then I would feel like, oh, flip, like that's just a write-off. And the whole day became a write-off. And I would just binge out the whole day. And then easily a day became 2 days. And then it became 3 days. And then it was like, well, the week's stuffed now. And then And it just snowballs like that. Like if your aim is to always be perfect, when you fail to be perfect, it can really, really do a number on your motivation and your self-esteem. And it can really snowball in that regard. And before you wipe your eyes out, you're months down the line of falling back into your old habits, and you're suffering the negative consequences. So the key to success is consistency, not perfection. You can screw up from time to time, and you will. You're human, like me. I'm no different. We all make mistakes. We all have pressures and challenges, and life is messy and complicated, and we all have times where, you know what, perfection just isn't achievable, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Acknowledge it, own it, dust yourself off, start again. You have a bad meal, or you have a day where work gets in the way and you can't get your workout in, or you get home and you don't get your time to go stand outside in the grass because something has happened, the kids are kicking off, you need to go pay attention elsewhere or do something else. Like, you have days where your well planned and well prepared routine doesn't work out for whatever reason. That's fine. We all have those. Dust yourself off, try again. Doesn't have to be a write-off. You don't have to write off the entire effort because you weren't able to maintain perfection. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. And if you are consistent over time, you will reap the results. Don't have to be perfect over time, just have to be consistent. So work these things into your routine, your daily routine. You want to be getting the right kind of nutrition for your biology. Now, we're all human beings, right? So we have 99.9 something percent identical biology. That means our genes, the very DNA is overwhelmingly more identical between us than what it is individual. And the reason I bring that up is because from a nutrition perspective, that means that we have a common baseline biological requirement for nutrition. This notion where everyone's different is true so far as taste and preference goes. It's not true so far as a fundamental bottom line biological requirement goes. We all have the same requirement for essential nutrition. Essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, essential vitamins, essential minerals. These are common throughout the entire species. The variation in that comes where additional stuff may be necessary by certain people who have deficiencies, and therefore through that deficiency, additional macros or micronutrients become mandatory for them, become essential for them. So that's the variation there. So biologically speaking, we have that common baseline requirement for nutrition. Understand what that is. Tailor your nutritional habits, your daily consumption to cater toward those, and you will meet your needs. Your sleep. I would highly recommend it. Dr. Andrew Huberman has recently done a series with Dr. I forget his name now, Matt something. I'll post a link to that series in the comments below the video. He's done a really, really good series on sleep, unpacking what sleep is, what it does for us on a biological level, what it does inside us, why it's necessary, why it's important, when to sleep, how to sleep, tools to improve your sleep. Like, really, really in-depth, really good stuff. It's a fascinating watch. It's long, 6 conversations, so 6 episodes, and each conversation is sort of between an hour and a half to 3 hours long, and they go into very, very good detail at a level that the layman can follow. Like, they do a really good job of unpacking this, really good job of laying it out, so you'll be able to follow it and understand what they're saying. And over the course of these 6 episodes, you build a really good foundational understanding for why sleep is important and how to structure your sleep and what tools you can use, tools being practices to improve your sleep. And sleep is critical. Like, we have to sleep, and that's easily demonstrated in how quickly life falls apart for you if you're not getting sleep. Like, if you're not getting good sleep, everything starts to suffer, and very, very quickly as well, especially your mental health. So sleep is vitally important. You want to structure your sleep habits in line with your circadian rhythm, and you want to prioritize sleep. Right? I used to be someone who prided myself on being part of a group called the Sleepless Elite. Basically, what that meant was I, on a regular basis, had less than 5 hours sleep consistently, and I found that I was still able to function correctly. And I thought that made me superhuman to a certain degree, and I used to be full of crap, basically. Um, and yeah, no, it wasn't good. It wasn't good for me at all. And knowing what I know now, like, I try to make sure that I get as close to 7 hours of sleep as I can. I find that if I sleep longer than 7 hours, I don't feel good. And what I mean by that is, if I go to sleep at, say, 10 o'clock in the evening, then I get up. I don't set an alarm, and I allow myself to sleep, and I'll wake up naturally, more or less the time my alarm would normally go off, and that's quite normal. People do that. But then I'll allow myself to go back to sleep and think, no, I'm not gonna wake up with an alarm. I'm gonna sleep as long as possible, and I then sleep for as long as I can. When I wake up, and if I get out of bed at like 7 o'clock or so I've had a good 8+ hours, I feel terrible. Like, I'm groggy. I feel like I've got a hangover. Like, I just don't feel good. I don't know why. I don't understand why. But what works for me is trying to go to bed at the same time every night. So I'm generally in bed between 9:30 and 10 o'clock in the evening. I'm asleep no later than 10. And then I'm currently up at 4 each morning. So I know that that's sort of 6 to 6.5 hours of sleep, and that is adequate for me. I'm getting enough complete sleep cycles to wake up feeling wide awake, refreshed, and ready to go. And I'm only cutting it to 4 a.m. because I'm using the 2 hours, 2.5 hours between 4 a.m. and 6:30, 6, depending on when the kids get up, to work on my book. When the book is done, I will probably go back to what was my routine before, and that was 5 a.m. So I was getting 10 to 5, those 7 hours, routinely. And that's Monday through Friday, every day, in bed more or less the same time, up at the same time. And establishing that routine helps to baseline and stabilize your circadian rhythm, and you sleep better for it, and quality of sleep improves. So having routine in your sleep pattern is important, and it's a good way to improve your sleep quality. Sleep is important. Like I said, I'll post that link to Dr. Huberman's series in the notes, and really recommend looking into it. It's thoroughly interesting stuff and thoroughly helpful stuff. Very, very practical stuff. Then we have movement. I'm a big dude, currently walking around at about 96 kilos. I don't know what that is in stone. That's 15.5 stone, just less than that somewhere, roughly. 200 and around about 210 pounds, I'm guessing, somewhere there, but 96 kilos. I'm 5'7", so I'm not tall. Like, if anything, I'm probably a little bit shorter than average height. But I've been 5'7" since I was 13 years old. So I used to think I was going to be a giant. I finished junior school, got into high school, and I was like taller than most people my age. And then through high school, everyone just sort of carried on growing, and I filled out. So I'm 5'7", I'm 96 kilos. I'm not fat, and I train hard. I enjoy calisthenics, so I enjoy body weight type stuff, high intensity, strength focused body weight stuff. So pull ups, push ups, dips. Yeah, like I enjoy body weight stuff, and I enjoy putting them together into circuits of supersetted exercises. So a typical upper body workout for me would be a pull up type exercise, immediately followed by a push up type exercise, immediately followed by a core type exercise. And I'll superset them like that, and I'll do rounds and rounds. So I'll do about 3 rounds of the same, and then I'll change each exercise, pull, push, core, and I'll do 3 rounds of that, and then change again, and I'll do about four complete rounds of supersets with 3 rounds of each particular group of exercise. Um, and yes, I'm big into exercise, and I'm enjoying that. And I do calisthenics because I like that it's compound functional movement focused on strength and control through full range of motion of the muscles, how they work together in unison rather than isolating a particular muscle to do a particular thing. I'm not a bodybuilder, nothing against bodybuilders. It doesn't appeal to me. It's not what I'm trying to do. I'm training for form and function for everyday life to be as healthy and robust as I can for as long as I can be. I surf, so that's my absolute passion sporting wise is surfing, surf skating, which is a weird little sport that you can do on a skateboard that emulates surfing, but is thoroughly useful as a tool for the surfer who can't be in the water very often, because surfing is not like riding a bike. Surfing is a bit like golf. For those of you who play golf, if you don't play golf for a long time, it doesn't stay with you. It's not like riding a bike where you just get back out there and pick up where you left off and everything's good and off you go. You lose skill very, very quickly. Now you can get that back. You get back into it and you'll pick it up again and things will start coming right, but it takes consistency and time to get that to happen. And surfing's very much the same with balance and coordination and rhythm. Very much the same. Surf skating is something that I can do here. I'm in rural Hampshire, so I'm landlocked. Life situations are such that I am not near the ocean and I can't be in wave pools as often as I'd like. I'm working on fixing that, and the dream is to be able to visit the wave pools multiple times a week and be able to surf there, because that's guaranteed waves, and that really appeals, especially in Britain. We don't have the consistency of surf that I had growing up with in South Africa, so that was a bit of a trade-off. But wave pools have really opened the possibility of having surfing as part of my day-to-day life again. So very, very keen to get back into that. So my point with all of this being, I have these sports that I enjoy doing. I also enjoy jiu-jitsu. I haven't done Brazilian jiu-jitsu in a long time now, but I'd love to get back into it once the kids are a little bit older, a little bit more independent, and there's a little bit more free time. Love to get back into Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. So I have these sports that I thoroughly enjoy doing, and I structure my training, my calisthenics type training around making sure that functionally my body is looked after. I'm strong, flexible, and I'm able to move in ways that are functionally appropriate for the sports that I enjoy and for everyday life and activity. I'm not bodybuilding. I'm not trying to just get as big as I can be and be an absolute unit walking down the road to intimidate or impress people. I don't care for any of that. I want to be in the best shape that I can be, and I want to be functional for the things that I want to do. So that's my focus with that. But the training is also incredibly important. The demand and the stress that physical exertion places on the body is incredibly important for metabolic health. It interplays with your metabolic health quite crucially, and it helps to obviously regulate body composition, and it helps to make sure that your metabolic health is sort of geared towards what you need it to be geared towards. If you're sitting and you're stuck in a sedentary day job, and you get home from that sedentary day job and then you're sat on the couch vegging in front of the TV whatever the case may be. If you're not getting daily movement into your life, you're suffering, and you will suffer increasingly over time because movement is so crucial to our biology. You have to have daily movement and exercise, and it doesn't have to be the same sort of exercise for everyone. Um, Look, I'd say at the very minimum, you want to get out and go for a good long walk, maybe, but even that is subpar. You're not doing yourself a service by neglecting resistance training. You highly encourage everyone to find a form of resistance training that they enjoy and to do that. There's the sun, it's finally over the horizon, so I'm going to squint a bit now because it's shining straight in my eyes, but that's good. We need that sun exposure. So what have we been through? We've been through nutrition, we've been through sleep, we've been through exercise, light exposure. Yeah, sun in my eyes is probably a brilliant segue into that. So I couldn't have scripted that any better. Light exposure, like this is something that I'm only just starting to sort of dabble my toes into, so to speak. Like really is quantum biology, as the field it sort of falls into. Light exposure is a fascinating thing. The types of light, natural light, their benefits, the timing of when you should be exposed to them, when you should discontinue exposure, artificial light and how that interferes with the different signaling that happens within your body. So as I sit here and I start getting this morning sunlight in my eyes, what's happening is it's triggering a pulse of cortisol. It's my wake up, get up and go hormone. And getting that sort of first thing in the morning after I've woken up. Now, okay, I've been awake for a little while before this working on the book, but getting that first thing in the morning means that my circadian rhythm is then sort of set and follows the right times, and I can expect reliably for my tiredness and wanting to go to sleep to set in about 18 hours from now. Yeah, and that's quite reliable. So I'm not au fait enough with the science of light exposure to sit here and give you a master class in it. I'm very much just getting into it, but I have come to understand that it is important, and I'm starting to work it, starting to incorporate it into my lifestyle. So I'm out here in the morning, exposing my eyes to the sun, getting that sun in my eyes, letting my body enjoy it wherever possible. And in the UK, it's fleeting because it's only a few months of the year where it's warm enough to be outside without a shirt on. I'm outside without a shirt on. Like, not necessarily out in public because people look at you a bit weird, but certainly at home. Like, I get home in the afternoons from work. If I'm outside in the garden with the kids, the sun's up, shirt's off. Like, I want that sun exposure on the skin. It's not the heat of day, high strength sort of, well, I would say midday sun, but in the UK, because the sun rises so early and sets so late, the hottest point of the day, the point at which the sun is the strongest, is probably around 2-3 p.m. And if you're outside, like shirt off and everything, for an extended period of time around, then you'll end up getting sunburnt, and then sunburn is not great for you. Now, there are some people who say they don't get sunburnt and can't get sunburnt, and it's interesting stuff. I don't not believe them, but I know that if I stay out in the sun for too long, I do get burnt. I don't necessarily stay burnt. I don't blister as such, but I do get sunburnt, and I don't think that that's great for my skin. So in the afternoon after work, so we're talking like 5 p.m. thereabouts, we're still with many hours of sun here in the UK, especially in summer. I will be outside without a shirt on, getting those rays in, because there's so many other things that light exposure, that sun exposure, does for you beyond just the cortisol pulse and the alignment of your sleep and wake pattern with your circadian rhythm. It does all sorts of other things, like the infrared light from the sun. It plays quite an important role in your gut function, which I was quite surprised to read about. I don't fully understand it yet, but yeah. So there's loads of things that light exposure, natural light, sunlight, does for your body. that are very, very critical. And I would encourage people to look into light exposure, to start to understand a little bit more and just get some basics like get out in the sun in the morning. Don't block the natural light. Don't wear sunglasses just because the sun's shining. Like when I drive, it's super, super bright and I'm driving and I've got the sun in my eyes, I'll have my sunglasses on because I can't be a squinting mess and crash into someone else and have an accident. And I obviously can't necessarily not drive. So there are times a day where, practically speaking, I'll wear sunglasses, and that's fine. I've got a lovely set of Oakley sunglasses. I love them to bits. Very, very, very protective from my Oakley sunglasses. And yeah, so I'm not saying never wear sunglasses. I'm saying, so far as practical, get the natural light in your eyes, especially first thing in the morning. Really important to get your cortisol pulse off and to set your circadian rhythm, your wakefulness and the onset of your sleepiness later in the day. Very important to get that timing going in line with your natural hormone signaling. And then get sun exposure on your skin, whether it's just your arms or whatever. Like, I appreciate for the ladies out there that maybe running around topless is not an option. My sympathies. I'm a guy. I don't care what I look like topless. I'm going to be topless in my own garden. But that's not practical for everyone, and I understand. But get as much skin exposed as you safely can and get some natural light on. Not in the heat of day. I'm not saying go and burn yourself to a crisp, but get some natural light on your skin. Your skin is an endocrine like organ. It's a hormone producing organ. That light interplays with it, and there's a function that it does biologically. You need that light on your skin. It's important. It's important for health. And again, if natural light is not necessarily available, I know in the UK over the winter months that's going to be a problem for me. You do get UV lamps that can be used, infrared lamps that can be used as alternatives. Obviously they're not replacements for the real thing, but where the real thing is not an option, like the grounding mats that I spoke about earlier, there are technology enabled alternatives that can allow you to do it as well. And we've been over the grounding thing already, so I won't rehash that, but yeah, get some time connected to the earth. It's important for you. Try and get that daily. Work these 5 fundamental pillars into your daily routine. Your nutrition, eat biologically appropriate stuff. Stay away from biologically inappropriate stuff. In other words, stay away from processed and hyper-processed foods. Eat the things that give you your essential nutrition in the most nutrient-dense and bioavailable forms that you don't have to process the hell out of to access. In other words, eat meat, people. Eat meat. Get sleep. Prioritize your sleep. You need it. It's important. And follow the link. Listen to Dr. Huberman's discussions. And just, prioritize your sleep. You will benefit for it. Get your daily movement in. Figure out what works for you. I highly encourage you to get some resistance training in. Resistance training is important. Resistance training is important. There's nothing that works as well as resistance training does. And resistance training is a very general term. It doesn't have to be picking up individual weights and going nuts in the gym. I do resistance training, but I do it with body weight stuff, doing pull-ups, push-ups, squats, functional movements like that. So there's different activities that fall under the banner of resistance training. Find what works for you. Pursue it. You need that daily movement. Look into light exposure a little bit. Get out in the natural sunlight. Get it in your eyes. Get it on your skin where safe to do so. Light exposure is actually important. Like I say, I'm only just scratching the surface of it to begin with, but I know enough to know that it's a foundational, important matter for us biologically. It does things in us biologically that are foundational to our metabolic health, so it is important to include. And then get grounded for a period of time, however long you can, every day. Connect yourself electrically to the earth. Do it barefoot outside. Do it via some earthing mats, whatever works for you. Just get grounded. These 5 things work together to form the foundational pillars of metabolic health. And then over and above that, you can look to add in. So get these 5 foundational pillars set right. Get your lifestyle centered around them. And once that is second nature, once that's up and going, once you have consistency doing its thing, then if you've got spare capacity, then you can start looking at the augmentation, the biohacks that come over and above these that improve the outcomes. Things like meditation, things like hot and cold exposure, things like breathing techniques, perhaps even some of the chemical sort of stuff like resveratrol and NMN and stuff like that. These are biohacks that I see as potential tools for augmentation over and above the foundational. The biohack should never replace the foundational. The foundational, as I view it, are mandatory, have to be done. The biohacks are nice to haves, can be added on top and could augment the results. That, I think, is a good way to look at it. It's certainly how I look at it, and that's how I'm structuring my life. And I'd encourage you to have a look at doing the same and figure out what works for you. Have a great day, folks.